Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me. If we haven't met yet, my name is Courtney McCarthy. I am the owner and head mindset coach at Loyola Fit, which stands for Love Your Body Fitness. I'm an ACE certified instructor, and my passion is helping men and women to use fitness to build their confidence and learn how to love their bodies. So it's why today's topic is so important. It's something that impacts us all and something that I talk to a lot of people both inside and outside of our community about. Failure. Many of us are afraid of it, so much so that it stops us from taking risks. It stops us from stepping outside of our comfort zone or trying new things, and it can make us stuck in behaviors that are harmful because we're too afraid to change. Or we'll do anything in our power to avoid it. People pleasing, striving for perfection, and holding back on being our most true, authentic selves. Worse yet, when we experience it, it brings up feelings of shame and guilt, and we berate ourselves, sometimes endlessly. We add this to the mounting pile of evidence of why we aren't good enough, of why we're failures, and it makes us more afraid the next time we face that kind of decision. Failure sucks. I think if any of us had the choice, we would be perfect all the time. But knowing that that isn't possible, I want to share today some really great strategies that show you that failure doesn't have to suck the way that it might currently feel. So in today's webinar, I'm going to teach you how to embrace webinar. In today's webinar, I'm going to teach you how to embrace failure, both in a broad sense and also specifically in the context of your self-love, health, and fitness journey. Together, we'll discover and explore your definition of failure and success, the difference between how a growth versus a fixed mindset can impact how we view failure and the choices that we make. And we'll learn some questions that we can ask and strategies that we can use to bounce back when we do experience failures or mistakes or things don't go the way that we planned, to lessen the negative impact that it has in our lives and so that it doesn't keep us stuck. So this will remove the barrier that our fear of failure has and often creates in our lives, which can hold us back from reaching our true potential. So you will need a pen and paper. Take a moment. You can even pause the video if you need to go grab it now. There's also the opportunity that if you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'll put my email at the end, and you can ask for some additional support if you need it. So before we dive in, I want you to remember that this webinar is meant to give you some questions, some tools, some activities for self-reflection and to explore, and strategies to help you. It's the first step. All right, so I really recommend saving this video or making notes of what some of the activities are so that you can come back to it when you need it. The key to really seeing change in your life is to apply these topics consistently and to have a curiosity to constantly explore your thoughts, to challenge self-talk, and to question your perspective. So that being said, I'm really excited to spend the next hour with you or so, and let's get started. The first question that we're going to kind of ask, and you don't have to write anything just yet, is what does failure mean to you? How we define failure greatly impacts how it affects us and whether it's seen as a positive or a negative experience in our lives. So the first question I want you to explore and write down is, how do you define failure? When someone or when you have failed, what does that mean? When you feel like you have failed, how would you describe it? Write down any words or situations that come to mind. And I call these types of activities word vomit or word diarrhea. So sorry for the imagery, just keep writing. But the idea is to let everything out without editing yourself. To just let the words flow, write down anything that comes to mind. And the more honest that you can be with yourself, the better that this activity, the more helpful this activity will be. So often I hear clients and members use examples like it's a lack of success. Failure means an unsuccessful person, place, or thing, not doing something that was expected or required of you, not being able to do something, not trying enough, something not working out the way that you expected it to. Failure often means that something didn't go as we hoped or as we planned. Maybe a mistake was made. However, many of us also link our definition and concept of failure with our definition of success, our ability to be successful, and our self-worth. So an example of this is, if something did not go as planned, that means I am not good, I'm not worthy, or I'm doomed to never be successful. If I fail my math test, I am not good at math. If I gain weight, it means I have no willpower and I'm ugly, undeserving of love. If I come to class and I get tired, it means I am out of shape and shouldn't even try. We also often think that success means an absence of failure. We often link success with natural talent or perfection. So when you're ready, the next question I want you to explore as you're writing is, what is your definition of success? How would you describe a successful person? How do you know when you are successful? What words would you use? And same thing, verbal diarrhea. Let it all out, unedited. Write down whatever comes to mind, all of your thoughts. As you're writing, it can sometimes be helpful to underline words that you notice are maybe appearing multiple times. Or if there's a specific statement that you wrote down or thought that really sticks out to you, that you're like, oh, this is the one that happens over and over again. This is always the first thing that comes to mind. Highlight those as well. And many of us often actually don't know what the real definition of success is. So I'm going to share that with you. The accomplishment of an aim or purpose. So what I love about this is that it doesn't say anything about how something was accomplished. It doesn't say how it was reached, how long it took. It doesn't say success is when you can do something perfectly on the first try with minimal effort. It doesn't say success is when something comes easy to you. It doesn't say success means never failing. So the next question that I want you to explore is, I want you to think of someone in your life that you personally know. So not somebody that you follow on Instagram or somebody that you look up to, somebody that's real in your life that you know and have conversations with and interactions with. You don't have to know them well, but you have to know a little bit about their life. Somebody that you know and that in your mind, you think of them, like when somebody asks you about them, you think of them as a successful person, all right? Or if you're struggling with that, think about your best friend, because most of us don't think of our best friends as failures. All right? Now, when this person comes to mind, I want you to write down, or even just look at your answers, and I want you to think about how they relate to what you wrote down. Meaning, if your best friend failed, or this person that you're thinking of, if they failed at something, if they made a mistake, would you apply the words that you wrote to him or her? Would you say the things that you wrote to him and her if they came to you and were like, oh my gosh, Linda, this awful thing happened at work? Would you say some of the things that you wrote down to them? Most of the time, yeah. I see lots of heads going like this. So often, and with this question as well, I want you to think about why you think that they're successful. What in your mind, about what you know about them, what words or situations or characteristics come to mind that make them successful? Often we tend to define these concepts differently. So the concepts of failure and success, we apply them differently for ourselves than we do for the people around us, especially those that we love or look up to. We make ourselves the exception to the rule and put the bar really, really, really high. I see some nods too. Yep. And we punish ourselves a lot if we don't meet our desired standard. We put so much pressure on ourselves to never fail, especially when it comes to health and fitness. So the goal of this webinar, and frankly, part of being able to love yourself, is learning how to understand failure from a new perspective, to understand the value and the role that it has in your life, and how to overcome the negative feelings associated with it, aka bounce back, when we experience setbacks, and to reevaluate the definitions that we have for ourselves and to maybe borrow some from the category that you put that other person in. So that's one great strategy, is to even just ask yourself, if my best friend, if my husband, if my wife, if someone I looked up to was coming to me with this exact situation, would it change how I saw them? What would I say to them? What support would I offer? So our first activity, so this was just kind of an activity of reflection, and this is a really great thing to do at any point where you're kind of experiencing what you feel like is a setback, or when you're feeling stuck, is to just write down the thoughts. Because oftentimes when they're in our heads, they feel like truth. They feel like 100% reality. And by shifting our perspective, by writing them down or by saying them aloud, we can often pick up on patterns, on themes, or frankly, we can sometimes see how ridiculous we're being. So the first activity is, I want you to think about the last time that you think that you failed or felt like a failure, or if there's a recurring time in your life where you actively feel like a failure or are afraid to fail. You can write about that too. So once you've come up with your example, the thing that you're going to think about, so follow up number 1, how did you handle it? Or how do you handle it? What did you feel? How did you feel? Or if you did try and fail, meaning that it's something that it hasn't happened yet, what do you think would happen? What is that fear? What are you afraid of? How would it make you feel, or what would you do if you tried and it didn't go the way that you hoped or planned? Follow up number 2. If you were in that same situation again, or got a chance to have a do-over, what would you do differently? And the third follow-up is objectively the hardest. That eased you into it. What was the gift that the failure gave you? Or if it hasn't happened yet, what could the opportunity give you? What did you learn? Is there anything that you're thankful for or can be thankful for, even if you don't actually feel thankful for it? And what opportunity did this quote unquote failure present to you? And if the situation hasn't happened yet, if someone else was describing the same situation and outcome to you based on something they tried, what advice would you give to them? How would you respond? And the last question, the last follow-up question for this little activity, is there another way of looking at it? What else could be true about that particular situation? So if it hasn't happened yet and you're thinking about this potential outcome, I want you to think about what other outcomes could there be? Even if you're like, Courtney, well, whatever, it doesn't feel like these are possible, so I want you to write them down. Just indulge me, write them down anyway. So feel free, if there's anything that's coming up that you feel like you want to share, feel free to put in the chat. But I also wanted to, I thought it was really important in this webinar to share a very personal story about something that I experienced that kind of represents some of the stuff we're going to talk about. So in my second ever round of running my own boot camp, so this was like, I was just a wee baby fitness instructor and I was starting out on my own. And I ran one boot camp myself, a little 8-week boot camp, and I called them boot camps at the time. So it was the second boot camp I'd ever run by myself. And I had 2 women sign up for one of my outdoor sessions. And after a few weeks, like 2 or 3 weeks, they both stopped coming. And this was something that like people paid for the 8 sessions. So if you stopped coming, like there were only 8 sessions. So I was like, okay, something's up. So I tried contacting them with no response, phone calls, emails. And finally I sent one of them a Facebook message, and she ended up responding. I asked if they had any feedback for me, if you know, what happened, why they stopped coming, if everything was okay. And I knew that I'd lost them as clients at some point, but I, you know, being a baby instructor, I really wanted to know why so that I could learn. And one of the women, we'll call her Shirley, she messaged back and she was pretty unhappy with me. And she said that I had said something during one of the classes that made her feel badly about herself and was why she stopped coming. She no longer felt comfortable coming to classes. So this was really early on in my fitness career, and it was when I was at my smallest, in my smallest body. And I used to talk about often my goals during my classes. And one of the goals before I lost weight was I always wanted to have what I called beat up arms. And these beat up arms were, I wanted somebody to look at me and think that I could beat them up. It was just this random vision that I had in my mind at that time for what my ideal body would look like. So oftentimes when I was talking with clients or just talking with people, I would use that expression of beat up arms, or something along those lines. And this woman interpreted that comment to mean that if your arms didn't look like that, or that was the goal I was holding up as far as what we should all be desiring, and that in order to be seen as worthy or fit or whatever, you had to have this very specific body type. And she felt that I was contributing to the societal pressures that I actually was trying to work really hard against, and that's why she stopped coming to classes. I felt awful. I felt like such a failure, knowing that I was like, oh my God. At the time, I was just starting off my journey, but I knew, that wasn't why I got into fitness. That wasn't, I was still learning, but that wasn't what I wanted people to feel like when they came to my classes. And I felt like despite all my best efforts and how much work I was putting in, I had failed these two women, and I had they walked away with a really negative impression of me. This 100% caused me to doubt myself as a trainer. I thought, oh my God, am I doing this wrong? Should I just stop now? What have I done? How do I make this better? Is this going to keep happening? Was I a hypocrite? Was I not doing my best? And I really had to do some of the internal work that I could either, I could sit there and self-loathe myself a little bit more, or I could not be defined by this moment, and I could own my mistake, and I could learn from it and improve. And it was actually a really big part of how Loyal But Fit was born, because it made me recognize the importance of language, and how something so simple that could be said in a fleeting moment in an exercise class could make or break someone's perception of self, someone's motivation. And it fueled me to be better, to learn more, to take that really seriously. And I don't think I would be where I am today if that woman, if she didn't have the courage to tell me how she felt, or if I hadn't failed, if in that moment I hadn't made that mistake, and that caused me to learn. So I'm actually very thankful that it happened in the end. And I've also learned that over time, I also won't be for everyone. If I tried to police my language and tried to phrase everything in the most perfect way that anyone, no matter who they were or where they came from or how they heard me, that they would all walk away with a really positive, 100% great impression of me. No matter what I do, there's some people that just won't like me, won't vibe with my energy, maybe they disagree with what I'm saying or how I approach things. I'm really grateful for feedback, and I always want to learn and improve and hear people's thoughts, but I've also learned to take what is valuable to me and to leave the rest behind. I'll never be perfect, and I know that failure, whether it's making mistakes, pissing people off, saying the wrong thing, taking risks is a part of being all in. It's a part of committing to who you want to be. It's a part of pursuing your dreams. It's a part of living authentically, is that, and in putting yourself out there, that failure is necessary, as this situation shows, for growth, learning, and pushing ourselves into new areas. I'm not successful because I never fail or because I have never failed, but quite the opposite. A big part of my success is because I've failed, is because I've put myself out there, is because I've tried, regardless of the outcome. I'm successful because I'm willing to fail again and again and again and again. Some of the best advice I ever heard was, if you ever heard of the Making Box, love them in Guelph. They do, back before COVID, they used to do a Royal City Heroes night where they'd bring in local Guelph celebrities, local peeps in Guelph, to kind of like roast them on stage and involve them in the improv. And I think his name was Jim Estill. He's the guy who runs Danby, I think. Although now my memory is serving me poorly. But he said somebody asked him about like what he runs this multi-million-dollar company. He's provided all this money for a bunch of the Syrian families that have come to Guelph, and they asked him like, what's your business philosophy? And he said, fail often, fail fast, fail cheap. And I was like, oh, I love the idea. Like, it's not don't fail. It's like, no, fail often, all the time. And I've tried to really embrace that ever since I heard that. Those 4 questions are important to put in your toolbox. And so to review those questions, it was, how did you handle it? What happened? How did you feel about it? If you were in the same situation, what would you do differently? What was the gift or the opportunity that it gave you? And is there another way of looking at it? What else could be true? And that last one is I find super important. When you feel like you have failed, ask yourself, how do I want to choose to respond to this? Because you do have a choice, always. What can I learn or do differently moving forward? What can I be thankful for? And what is the opportunity here? Because so often we don't really think of it as a choice, but allowing us to throw the pity party, which many of us are super good at, of sitting there and just coming up with all the reasons that we're awful and all the reasons that this failure is awful and all the reasons, or even better yet, I know that many of you probably do this, is making all the lists of the could haves, what you could have done if you had this perfect foresight and knew exactly what was going to happen. Oh, I would have done that and I would have reacted, or I would have said this differently. So those are the 4 questions that number one is the first tool I'm introducing to you is that those questions you can apply to any situation that you face, health, fitness related, work related, personal related, whatever. And the affirmation and the reminder, and maybe this is, you can write down this exact one, is success is not the absence of failure. I am successful because I show up, I try my best, and I continue to keep trying. And I think that last one is important. Success is being able to get back up, shake it off, and keep going. So using this strategy, so the combination of these questions and that affirmation, you can begin to train yourself to think of failure as a positive opportunity to learn and grow rather than a setback, even if it feels like one. You can build your confidence to take risks and embrace yourself as a worthy, successful, and deserving person. And for these questions, and as you're beginning to learn in this process, I recommend actually sitting down to do it just like we've done together today in the webinar, actually sitting down and writing out the answers to the questions. And why? Because our brains work really fast. Illogical or deeply emotional thoughts can, again, feel really true when we think them. And by allowing ourselves to slow down, to write it out, getting them out of our head and onto paper allows us to view them from a different perspective. It allows us to pick up on patterns and recurring themes, and it forces us to slow down, to breathe, reflect, and create the opportunity to challenge those thoughts not just accepting them as blanket truth. The more you do this, and it's going to feel real awkward in the beginning because it forces you to just change how you've been doing it, but the more you do it, the more consistently you do it, those questions will become more automatic. They'll become more of an immediate reaction when we start to feel like a failure, or when we start to feel those negative emotions and something doesn't go as planned. So the goal is to go through the uncomfortableness now to start to build that as a muscle. So maybe we have the first thought as, oh my God, I failed. This is awful. I'm awful. But we want to train our brain so that the second thought is there another way to look at this? What else could be true? And that will help you get unstuck and not go to the pity party. Decline the invitation. So failure does not have to mean the end of something. Failure does not have to reflect on your own personal value. It's not something to be avoided, but something that's part of the journey. The sooner we can begin to accept that, the easier our journey will be, and the failures will not hold us back. And this is the difference. We're going to segue into the next area that I want to talk about. It's the difference between what's called a growth versus a fixed mindset. There's a great book, again, if you're a Loyable member, there's a great book in the Loyable library that literally the whole book is all about this difference between the growth and the fixed mindset. So a fixed mindset is the belief that our talents are fixed. You are either naturally good at something or you're not. You are pretty or you're not. You are popular or you're not. People fit into categories and it is black and white. Therefore, a failure or not being good at something can be earth-shattering. If you are naturally smart and you meet somebody who is smarter than you, you have failed. That's part of your identity. And there's nothing that you can do because you are just not as smart as that person, or you're just not good at it. And that's it. That's where the story ends. If you struggled with sports growing up and you were told that you were unathletic, it stops there. You're just not an athlete. That's it. You'll never be good at it because you're not naturally that way. A fixed mindset can leave you trapped within the confines of your own perception of reality and worth. So this often comes into play with what many of us experienced in school when we were growing up, right? You had the smart kids and you had the dumb kids. Or you had, this student that was good at math and everybody else wasn't. Or you had this person who was like just a natural piano player phenomena and that person wasn't. And so often we do this with ourselves. We decide, and this is separate from enjoying something, we just decide that like we're just not good at it. And I'm sure that you can think of many times in your life that you said that, oh, I don't do sports. I'm not athletic. Oh, I'm not a math person. So the difference between that and a growth mindset on the other hand recognizes that natural talent or characteristics are not a mark of success or failure. Talent can be learned through hard work. You can change something that you may not naturally excel at. When someone has a growth mindset, the goal is not to be the best or perfect at something. The goal is to learn, grow, and seek out opportunities to be better. That's all. When you adopt this mindset, you appreciate the opportunity to learn or feel challenged because it can make you better. If you are smart and you meet someone smarter than you, it becomes an opportunity for you to be smarter by being around them. It allows you the opportunity to ask questions, to expand your knowledge and your framework, to discover new things, to improve. Not being good at something is not a failure. It's rather a temporary state that you can't do something yet. I'm sure you've all heard me say that before. Add on that word yet. One that you can move on from and just not care because you're just, or you can choose to change it if you wanted to. I always joke, I'm not good at basketball. My hand-eye coordination is not great, but I'm sure I could be if I wanted to be. I could take basketball lessons. I could play basketball all day and all night. And I bet after time, would I be the next, Michael Jordan? Probably not, but I probably would get better at basketball. And most importantly, if you have a growth mindset, your worth as a person is not tied to the outcome of your efforts. It is solely focused on your ability to show up and try. That's it. Isn't that empowering? Doesn't that sound so good? Knowing that those sort of choices are under your control, that your perception of the situation can change everything, that makes me excited. When I first started learning about growth mindset, I was like, this makes me excited. This makes me look at life so differently that it's all up to me, and anything that I encounter is just, I can either choose to try to get better at, or I can walk away. It's no longer something I need to avoid. It's no longer something I need to be fearful of, but something that's a natural part of the journey to success. We will fail in order to learn, in order to grow, in order to generate skills that we might not naturally be born with, but we can choose to have. And if you think about this, think about how many people that we hold up in our culture or our society, or even the people you look at in your life as successes, and very few of them are people who just were good at it from day one, right? Like if you think of Oprah, Oprah was told by a TV station that she just didn't have the face or personality to be on TV. And then what happened? Harry Potter was rejected by like, I can't even remember the number, like dozens of different publishers before being picked up. Very few people have this like linear, I'm good at something and I just keep getting better at it, and then that's how I'm successful. Most people, their journey goes blah, 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 in some order. Or they try and they fail, and they try and they fail, and they try and they fail. But each time they fail, maybe they fail a little bit less. And they go, okay, try again. So activity number 2, we're going to examine our barriers. So many times when we struggle to stick to a routine or a lifestyle change, or when we feel unable to act or make a change to something that deep down we know doesn't serve us, we rationalize our inactivity or our failure by using other reasons as failures. So oftentimes we categorize these as excuses. So the most common ones I hear from clients or members: I had a really busy day week. This is a busy time at work. I had to work late. I'm busy with the kids, etc. I'm so tired all the time. I have no energy. I have no money. Can't afford it. I just don't have the budget for it. These things are expensive. I wasn't in the mood. I don't like exercise. I didn't feel like it. I'm not good at it. Going to the gym isn't fun. I'm out of shape. I'll never be as fit as the others, or I don't keep up with the others. It's too hard for me, and that I don't feel like it. That comes up a lot. Oftentimes these excuses or barriers that we create for ourselves are really cover-ups, covering up something deeper that we might be too afraid to explore. So we're going to explore it today. So for this activity, I want you to write down the first reason that pops into your head as to why you feel stuck, or maybe why you identify as a failure in one aspect of your life or another. Why you might be avoiding something or aren't doing something that you want to be doing. It can be related to fitness, health, or really anything. If I asked you what is holding you back from your goals, what is stopping you from doing the things that you want to do or the thing that you want to do, why are you struggling and not taking action? What would your response be? And I want you to keep asking yourself why. So whatever you wrote down first, ask why again. So same thing, that thing that I said, why am I feeling that way? Why am I feeling stuck against that? Why am I not doing something about it? If you're too busy, why are you too busy? And I want you to keep asking until there's no answers left. So Lori and I like to call this the annoying toddler activity. Why? 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 And I want you to keep going until something hits you differently. Meaning you're going to keep asking that question why, and one of those answers you're going to feel in your like gut or chest or somewhere in your body. And you're going to be like, that's it. That's the reason. That's the real reason. That's the deepest reason that I am feeling the way that I'm feeling, or the reason that I'm stuck. So I want to talk about some of the things that might come up. So I'll share with you mine. And this is actually mine. This is the story that comes up most often in my life. I'm the too busy person. I am too busy. I have too much on the go. If I had more time, I would 100% do more to reach my goals. But I don't have time, so I won't. I don't do that because I'm too busy. So usually the reason behind those surface level barriers or those excuses are one of two things. It's either a fear of something, or it's a conflicting value. So we want to try to identify what those are. So let's talk about the fear element first, since that's probably very common in today's webinar. Many of us are afraid of failure because, again, failure has been linked to our self-worth. And maybe it's something that we were told growing up. It can be incredibly eye-opening to gently explore what's at the root of your fear. It may be more simply linked to the opportunity that we're making excuses for. Example, like I'm afraid I won't be able to complete the class. I'm afraid if I apply for the job, I won't get it. But more often than not, these fears run deeper. I want you to ask yourself the question, what am I really afraid of? If I've tried and failed, what might it mean for me? An example of what this may look like for a mom of young kids who often says she's too busy, there might be a fear of spending time away from her children. That might be the first kind of level of fear. But when we keep drilling down, that fear might actually be the feelings of insecurity around motherhood and her ability to be a good mom. There may be guilt around spending time away from her children, that she's dropping them to leave the other parent to fend for themselves, that she's neglecting on her own duties, that she's being selfish, that her kids should come first, etc., etc., etc. And this is not something that may come easy for you. In fact, you may not discover what the true answer is to this question during the course of this video. This might be something that may take some time to really reflect on. It is a question, though, that is worth exploring. And if you're ready to make true change in your life, it's an area where the help or support of a coach can make this process both easier and faster, or a therapist or a counselor or whoever it is that you want to work with. But the reason that this fear is so important to name and uncover is because it isn't until we're aware of something that we're able to change it. We have to first be able to see it, to acknowledge it, to understand it in order to change, to understand why it's there. So often if you've tried making changes over and over and over again, or if you keep feeling like you get stuck on the same thing over and over again, it's because we haven't done the work to figure out what's underneath it and healing that aspect of ourselves. So often when it comes to the fear of failure, many times it comes back to something that we experienced as a kid, something that we were told as a kid, something that was modeled to us as a kid. So a really great question to ask. And we talk about this in some of our other videos and webinars. So if you want more resources on this, feel free to reach out. Is asking yourself, is this my story? Is this something that was told to me? Is this something that was given to me? Is this something that was handed down to me? Or is this something that I experienced when I was young that impacts how I'm able to show up today? I was listening to one podcast that phrased this question in a really great way. Instead of asking what's wrong with you, ask what wrongs have you experienced. So that's a nice way of saying, was your mom really afraid of failure? Was she under the belief that she wasn't good enough and therefore pass that on to you, or was unable to love you and show up for you and support you in the way that allowed you to heal your inner child's wounds? So let's talk now. And again, if you have any questions along the way or any thoughts you want to share, feel free to use the chat. But let's talk about number 2, which is conflicting values. So this process is very similar to the discussion of fear. We have to know something, we have to become aware of it. We have to acknowledge it exists in order to change something. So many of us value, and I'll use health and fitness for example, in that we want to be healthy. We want to feel good in our bodies. We may have desires to have more energy, better sleep, lose weight, less aches and pains, whatever that is for us. We may want those things. We may think we want those things, and we may value those things as important. We might see them as important, but often there may be something else in our life that we value more that is in conflict with that. A great example I was once told is about a man who married a woman who came from an Italian family, and his wife loved to cook for him. That was her love language. Acts of service, she wanted to feed him well, and it was part of her family tradition, and she viewed it as part of her identity, part of her role as a wife, a mother. In other words, when she was cooking that food, it wasn't just food, that was her love on the plate. And this man wanted to make some changes to his diet to feel better, to feel differently in his body, and he was ready to make a change, but he was excited about it. He felt good about the changes he wanted to make in his life, but most nights he came home and his wife had prepared this beautiful big meal and bought his favorite beer and maybe his favorite snacks. And if the man in that moment were to reject and say no to the food, he felt like he was rejecting his wife. And he values his marriage, he values her self-esteem, he values her love, so he eats the food. And without even realizing it, there's a value conflict that exists in his life, which is preventing him to make the change. But once it's acknowledged, then we can find strategies to communicate, to make sure that she still feels love and that he can, maybe say no sometimes and hold his boundaries. So sometimes this might be what you don't think it is. So meaning that we might place a lot of value on comfort. So we may want the thing, we might value the thing, whether it's applying for the job or trying the new class or putting on the outfit. And most of us, from a biological and psychological perspective, we really value certainty and comfort, even if the certainty and comfort is harmful to us. We value knowing what's going to happen, even if we know it's a not good thing. Meaning, for example, if we don't apply for the job, okay, well, we don't get the job that we might want, and we don't get the raise, but at least we know where we're at, right? That's something that we often don't recognize, that it's something that we value. We value, I know this sounds ridiculous, we value staying stuck because we know what stuck is. So if you've told yourself your whole life that you're a failure, as much as you might say to yourself, well, it feels awful to be a failure. It feels awful. I don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't want this. I don't want my life to look like this. Part of you, and it's not your fault, it's a purely like psychological human need thing, part of you does want to stay a failure because it's comfortable, because it's what you know, especially if it's something that you were told again and again from a very young age. So the idea of leaving that comfort zone comes into conflict with wanting to stay in the comfort zone. And that in and of itself can be a huge source of conflicting values that we just need to acknowledge. The first step is acknowledging that that's the thing that's happening in your brain. The tug of war, right? I want to do this. No, you don't. I want to do this. No, you don't. And that's part of what keeps us stuck. The conflict may often be because, and I was actually just talking to a member about this week, is shoulding. Many of us should all over ourselves all the time. You should go to the gym because that is what makes you a thin person, and therefore you will be worthy and desirable, which means you are not worthy and desirable now. And you should do it. You should be able to balance the schedule of work, 2 kids, and a social life because that is what a good mother does. So often, and especially women, we should all over ourselves, but we don't often examine the shoulds enough. So meaning, are they coming from, are they your shoulds? Were they given to you? Are they realistic shoulds? Or do they come from an unrealistic place? Especially as women. You might be telling yourself the should, but do you actually want the should? So once again, this is not an easy process, but let's think about maybe the old habits that you keep falling back to, or the actions that keep holding you back from your goals or desired success or changes, or the shoulds. So here's a few questions to consider. What do the old habits or behaviors or excuses or the things that are keeping you stuck, what do they actually bring to your life? So where did the shoulds come from? Did you decide them? Did they happen over time? Were they given to you? How do they serve you? And the answer can't be that they don't, because if they didn't, as I said, you wouldn't be doing them. So really try to be honest here. What do you get out of them? What needs do they meet? How do they make you feel good? Which again, may feel counterintuitive. Or do they make you feel good at all? And lastly, how do these answers conflict with your goals or who you want to be or what you're trying to achieve? And again, a big part of that might be, the answer most commonly I feel like is just knowing. I value these things because, or what they're giving to me is a sense of identity. I don't know who I would be if I wasn't not enough. What does that version of Deanne look like if Deanne just thought I was enough? I don't know. And when our brains don't know, that's a scary place to be. So that's why we value the certainty. So do the answers or the things that are coming to mind, the things that you're writing down, do they feed into your old definitions of success and failure, and are they part of that idea of a fixed mindset? Something that you're good at or you're not? Do they need to be adjusted or challenged or released in order for you to move forward? For example, it isn't wrong for fitness or going to the gym to not be your number one priority. So it's okay for you to value certain things more in your life than going to the gym or coming to class. But discovering those conflicting values can help you structure your goals and your action plans to be able to create a realistic path forward for yourself that achieves the balance of both that works for you, and to help you set healthy decisions and boundaries, and to be able to let go if you just don't care about the should, but someone else says you should care about the should, to start to be able to be like, no, that's your should, not mine. Stop shoulding all over me. I do that enough myself. Thank you. So one of the best ways to start to do that and move forward If you're recognizing the shoulds and there's things you want to change or adjust or replace with other less shoulds, is through affirmations. So think about your priorities or the negative self-talk patterns or the ways that you view failure, the definitions of failure and success that you might want to change. Maybe some of the things that you underlined or highlighted or circled today. And I want you to create 1 to 2 sentences that you can tell yourself every day to start to replace those with more positive, empowering thoughts. So a few of my favorite, especially as they relate to this topic: I'm doing the best I can with what I've got. Me and Lori say that one all the time. Everything is always working out in my favor. I am capable of hard things. I'm going to show up, give it my best, and embrace this opportunity. My life is full of opportunities to learn, grow, and discover more about myself. I am successful at everything I do because I am willing to try. And you can use these affirmations for specific situations. So if you're about to apply for a job, write down 1 or 2 sentences about how I am deserving of this role because blank, blank, blank. Or you can look at it as the other way. You can affirm new beliefs about failure. If I do this and it doesn't go how I expect, I will be okay. I will still have worth. I can try again. And the best way to use these affirmations is to write them down and put them on a mirror, maybe multiple mirrors, maybe multiple places. Maybe I recommend it. Actually, I was just talking about it. This is somebody I was like, put it in your car. If you have a long commute, put it in your car, on your dashboard. Somewhere where you'll see them often and say them again and again and again. So in combination with the questions and activities we covered tonight, today I should say, asking yourself those questions, challenging the immediate thoughts, trying to identify, is this a fixed mindset thought, or how can I lean into more of the idea of the growth mindset? How can I reevaluate my definition of success and failure? That in combination with using affirmations to give you the language to help your brain not just have a void. Okay, well, I don't want to say that. Here's what I want to say instead. I don't want to think that. Here's what I want to think instead. We want to fill that void, fill that gap. They may feel really uncomfortable at first. Again, you might be like, well, Courtney, this feels like crap. I'm just saying stuff I don't believe in the mirror. But over time, our brain does not know the difference between a experienced memory and a visualized memory. So if we go and do the thing versus if we spend lots of time, we did the thing, visualize the thing, our subconscious brain does not know the difference. So if you don't feel confident, but you keep telling yourself you're confident, eventually you're just going to trick your brain and it's just going to become confident. And it really is that simple. You won't feel it right away, but over time, literally one day you'll just be like, oh, that didn't feel as hard as I thought it would. Maybe this thing Courtney talked about is working. It just won't feel as hard. So consistency matters. So start by committing to 30 days of affirmations, or if 30 days feels too long, just this week. But commit to trying something again and again, 2 or 3 times a day, and just observe the results. Think of it like a little experiment and be like, what's the worst that can happen? I try it and I just feel exactly the same way I felt right now. So that's it for our webinar today. I hope you found it helpful, and I hope that some of these tools help you to embrace challenge, embrace failure, have a new perspective on life, yourself, and your role in it. This is what we do at Loyola Fit. We are experts in helping you to see things from a new perspective, to help you on the path of self-discovery, of self-love, finding joy in movement, and mindful eating. And we would love to be a part of your journey. So you showed up today. You said yes to spending time on you and to doing the hard work. You can keep saying yes. Yes to you, yes to joining our community, and we can help you make leaps and bounds to feeling better in your skin. Click the link below to book a time to meet with one of our coaches if you want more information, or if you want to ask any questions about the webinar or about the memberships in our community, to find out more about the community, the benefits of becoming a member, and how we can help you along your path. If you have any questions, comments, we would love to hear from you. You can reach out to me either on Instagram or Facebook, or email info at loyobafit.com. The big difference. Well, I can't wait to hear what you guys think about some of the affirmations and how it goes. So keep in touch, keep me posted. Thank you so much for spending time with me today, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you. Go to there and have a great day. Bye, everybody.